their jobs secure.
Yeah.
And so I started to be welcomed into the family.
Yeah, that's so cool that you're immediately able to come in and start to make an impact, right?
Yes.
But let me ask you, did you face any challenges when you went in, or did you struggle in any way kind of going through that transition, and certainly moving into like that kind of world, which you were not used to at all? Certainly working with like, all the guys back there. And
Yeah, the challenges I think came, the first challenge was because it was a male populated shop. We had pictures of the Sunshine Girls, right? We had Playboy pictures, and it was kind of uncomfortable. I understand it was a guy's environment, and I don't think they were intentional because they were already up there.
Yeah.
It's not that they put them up on purpose. And I'd look at them and I go, but imagine if I wasn't who I was and I had hired a woman.
Yeah.
How would she feel? So I took it upon that perspective. So I looked at it. I didn't say anything, but I said, let me just play a little around with them to see if they'll get the point. So one day our local fire department came knocking on the door, and they had these beautiful calendars of beautiful firefighters with their 6-pack, and some of them were wearing very scant clothing. And I said, you know what, I'll take a few copies of those, right? And before everybody was at work, I hung them up next to the ones with the ladies, and they noticed really quickly, they're looking at each other, and then you could see the words coming out of the mouth, like, what the, right? And so one guy actually had the nerve to say, how come you put those pictures up? They make me feel uncomfortable. And I said, okay, so put yourself in my shoes.
Yeah.
How do you think I felt the first day when I walked in here? And he said, point taken.
Yeah.
And everything was taken down.
Mm-hmm.
So we were respectful. But if I didn't say anything, that would have been status quo.
Yeah.
So I had to muster up the courage to do something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Even if I would have used words in a nice way, I don't think they would have really understood how uncomfortable I felt.
Yeah.
But they got the point. The other challenges I had was they thought I was a spy for my father-in-law. They wanted to see if, maybe she was here to check on our work ethics. Maybe she's going to write us up and then we're going to get fired. That was their greatest fear, but I wasn't there for that. So what they would do is we have a lot of machines that do different purposes. And before you start on any machine, the first step in safety is you have to check the settings to make sure all the parts are securely put on, especially cutters. Okay, cutters on shapers or even the planer. If they're not secured and they come off, you can lose a finger, a hand, or worst case scenario, you can get sliced open in the midsection. You can die. So they thought it was a good idea to adjust some of the settings on the machines so that when I made a piece, the piece would not come out as it was supposed to, right? But I remembered my husband and my father-in-law drilling in my head, make sure, because we're not going to be shadowing you all the time, and we don't want anything happening to you. I said, okay. So when I started working on my own, this is when they started messing around with the equipment. But I would check, cutters weren't put in, the wrong ones were put in, and then I would patiently take the tools, disassemble the machine, get the right part, put it back, and then there was always sample wood. You test it before you put the good piece of wood through, right? And they would never catch me on that. So they stopped after a while, right? And so then the other things were like, I would work more efficiently than they would and faster, because when I was assembling or creating a piece, I would actually think about doing it even faster, even better. And this bothered some of them, because that means if I set the pace, then they would have to follow suit as well. And a few of them would get upset and they say, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to get us fired? And I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, you're working too fast. Slow down the pace. We don't like you working at this pace. And I said, I'm sorry, but this is the pace that it's a reasonable pace, and this is the pace where we should be at. In fact, you're working too slow. And, you know, the slower you work, the less efficient we are, and you lose clients this way. And think of the big picture. If we lose clients and they go to our competitors, how does that speak for your job security? And they would think about it, and they said, you're right. So all you had to do with these challenges is you had to make sure that you spoke about it, or you took actions to correct them. And I wouldn't back down.
I think that's awesome. And I think there's a great lesson in there, just to make sure you always check your work. Do you know what I mean? No matter what. And no matter the situation, make sure you're always checking your work, and also coming in with an open mind to innovate like you did. And you came in and you're able to change the work ethic. You're able to change the way things were being done, which I think is awesome, to be able to walk into something